Okay, so the circular flow is the first the first real model. Um, some people think it's really simple, but actually, I think it's one of the most useful and powerful models that there is in economics. Um, Partly because of its simplicity, and partly because it really does describe the way in which economies actually work. And its basic premise is very simple, which is that one person's expenditure. So if I go and spend some money, one person's expenditure is another person's income. So, if I go, taking our beer and glass model one stage further, if I go out tonight down to the Red Lion in Chargrove, and I buy myself a pint of bitter, that's my expenditure, but it is the Red Lion's income. The owners of the Red Lion now have another £3.50, £4, how much beer is these days, and therefore they can go out, and buy more stock, or they can, I don't know, have a haircut. That then is their expenditure, which is somebody else's income. And this is really powerful because it forms the basis of something that we'll come on to in a minute, which is called the multiplier, which is that if an economy starts moving in one direction, if demand starts to rise, that means that I'm spending more money, that creates more income for somebody else, which means that they can spend more money, which creates more income for somebody else, and so on. And likewise, that's how recessions, periods of negative economic growth, strictly a recession is 2 consecutive quarters or 6 months of negative economic growth. But that's how they can get going so fast, which is that demand falls, so firms decide that they don't need their temporary staff. Those people have no income, so they can't go out and spend. That means other firms get rid of their 0 hours contract staff, and so on and so forth. And very rapidly, a recession can gather momentum. So the model itself is pretty straightforward. There's a couple of things you need to bear in mind. So, the one I'm going to show you at the moment is a very simple, what's called two-sector model. The two sectors are, on the one hand, households. So that's you and me. Our job in this model, is that we own all factors of production. So the assumption is, in this model, that apart from owning my own labour, I also, that ultimately land is owned by people, capital is owned by people. In other words, everything's owned by somebody somewhere, even if it's via shares in companies and so on. So they own all the factors of production. The other sector in this model is firms. Their job is to produce goods and services. So, how are they going to produce goods and services? The answer is that they're going to need to hire factors of production from households. They're going to need land, they're going to need labour, they're going to need capital, all that type of stuff. So what's going to happen is that households are going to supply factors of production, like labour and land and so on and so forth. To firms. But obviously I'm not going to supply these factors of production for nothing. I'm going to require, in exchange, what's called a factor income. The most obvious one being wages, but also rent, and so on. So that's one transaction. So I've now got an income, and firms have factors of production. So what firms are going to do is they're going to produce goods and services, and they're going to sell them to households. So, the second flow, so that's, we can call this up here, we can call this top set of arrows the factor market, where factors of production are bought and sold. Down the bottom, firms now, they produce and sell goods and services. And in exchange, obviously, they're going to be paid. So there is expenditure or consumption by households. And what we'd have down here is what's called the product market. So this is a pretty simple model. Let's suppose that households have £100 million that they use to spend on firms' goods and services. Firms have £100 million that they can now produce goods and services with. That's all paid out back to households in the form of incomes and profits, and so the cycle continues. Firms pay, say, £100 million. Firms pay, say, £100 million of factor incomes to households. Households spend £100 million on firms. Firms now have £100 million with which they can pay households. Households now have £100 million with which they can pay firms. So this is a very simple model, which is always in equilibrium. If you remember, equilibrium is a situation with no tendency to change. This model will simply continue. Households will receive £100 million, which they will spend because we've given them no other choice. When households receive income, the only option they have in this model is to spend it. Firms then have their money back, which means that they can produce again, and so on and so forth. So obviously this model has a problem, which is it's very unrealistic in the sense that households don't spend all of their income, and firms don't get all of their demand just from UK households in the UK. But we'll turn to that in a minute. So that's the basic idea. Households, they own facts of production and sell them to firms. Firms, they use those facts of production to produce goods and services, which they sell back to households.